Yeah, Doyle never liked to lose a fight, and he'd always find some way to even it up. If he'd get a hold of a club or a hammer or a pitchfork or a board or anything, and usually when the fight ended, I was the one that had to retreat. One time he threw a board at me. It was, I suppose, about probably a 1 by 3 or 4 and probably 4 or 5 foot long. And as I was kind of running sideways to get away from him, he threw that board at me. And the end of that board hit me right on the hip bone. And my one leg just went numb. And I went right down on the ground. And I remember him standing over me telling me what all he was going to do to me. And my dad appeared on the scene and kind of put a stop to things. Another time, one Sunday morning, there wasn't any wood in the wood box for the cook stove. And that was Doyle and my job to keep that wood box full of stove, because that's full of wood, because that was what we cooked on, was a wood stove. And Dad, he kind of jumped on us about getting out there and getting some wood in there so that we could have Sunday dinner. Well, I thought it was Doyle's turn to fill the box, and he thought it was mine. And anyway, we both ran out there, and this wood pile was through a gate and out into a field that was probably 50 yards away from the house. And we had this wood split up just right to put in a cook stove. And we had to throw it up on a pile. And I suppose the top of that pile was probably 10, maybe 15 foot high, up in a peak. And I run in there and I grabbed up an armload of wood and started back to the house with it. And Doyle, he'd taken our little coaster wagon out there, and he wanted to fill the wagon and pull it back in there. And he wanted me to put my wood in the wagon. And I wouldn't do it. I said, I got my wood, you fill the wagon yourself. And I turned around and started to walk away, and everything went black. And pretty soon I come to, and it took me a little bit to remember where we were at. And I had kind of a headache, and I put my hand around the back of my head, and it was covered with blood. And I looked around, and Doyle wasn't anywhere to be seen. So I gathered up my wood and went up to the house, and Dad came out there, and I guess I wasn't walking too steady or something. And he says, "What's the matter with you?" And then I guess he seen some blood on my hand. And I said, "I think Doyle hit me in the back of the head with a stick of wood." He steps down off of the porch and he hollers, "Doyle!" No answer. He hollered 3 or 4 times. Doyle never come to the house until that night when it was time to go to bed. but he got so mad that he threw that stick of wood at me and hit me right in the back of the head with it. Probably didn't aim to hit me, but he probably didn't care either. Anyway, that was...
Hang on a second. Let me make sure that this is working. Okay. It's working.
I guess the next thing I want to tell you, and I don't want to tell you very bad, but one night we had a bad rain thunderstorm. And the Sheraton River, which was, I don't know, a mile or 2 north of us, I forget which now, the bridge washed out over the river. And the mailman couldn't get the mail across the river. But somebody got mail down there and brought it over up just north of us, and Jean Krause, a neighbor girl, and I guess I was probably 10 or 11, something like that. And she was the same age I was. We rode our ponies up there to get the mail. And for us and the neighbors around, close neighbors around the neighborhood. Well, when we went to put the first mail in the box, something fell out of it, and I picked it up, and it was a little sample of Exlax. There's 2 little squares, and we had never heard of Exlax, had no idea what it was, so we ate it. Well, then we got to wondering if there was any more. Well, everybody that we'd picked their mail up had a sample of this Exlax in it. We thought, boy. So we ate all of it. And we got the mail all delivered, and we went home. And I went home and ate dinner, and after dinner I went down to the barn to get my pony out. I don't know, I was going to do something. And I was just big enough that these barn doors, you know, have the lower door and the higher door. And I could put one hand on this lower door and just jump out over it. And I was going to jump over this door, and I jumped, and everything cut loose. And that's when I was a swinger. I wore bibbed overalls and no shorts. And so I washed my overalls out in the horse trough rather. It wasn't a big tank, luckily. And then I upset the horse tank, and then I had to pump it full of water again because I don't think the horses would have wanted to drink out of it. And I spent a pretty busy rest of the afternoon out there behind the barn. But I was too embarrassed to say anything to Jean about it. I thought, no way am I going to tell her about this. And I didn't see her for 2 or 3 days, and she came over to our house one day, and we were talking, and pretty soon she said, you know that candy that we ate the other day when we was delivering the mail? I said, yeah. Did that make you sick? I said, no. Oh, she said, it made me so sick I thought I was going to die. I wasn't about to tell her what happened to me. Well, anyway, I never did mention it, and when we went to high school, she went to Corden and I went to Millerton, so we never saw each other very much during our high school days. And then when she got out of high school, she went to Illinois, to college. And when I was over in Illinois, I was taking a course at the University of Illinois for dairy herd improvement testing. And I went to show one night, and I come out of the theater, and she was there. And she introduced me to her husband. She was married. And so I never saw her again for, years. And I always thought, if I ever see her again, I'm going to tell her what happened to me and ask her if she remembered that. And about 3 years ago, I guess, she went to California with her husband. And about 3 years ago, she was back down to Millerton, and I got a hold of her, and Mo and I went down to meet her, and we picked her up and took her to lunch, and then we drove around the old neighborhood and talked over old times. And I happened to mention about, do you remember the time that we delivered the mail when the bridge was out north of us? And she says, no, I don't think so. And I said, oh, when we ate all the Exlax? Oh, yeah. She says, now I remember. Anyway, that was another episode that kind of stuck with me all my life.